The application of tactics aimed to assist an organization in dealing with a sudden and severe bad event is known as crisis management. A crisis might be caused by an unforeseen incident, or it could be an unanticipated consequence of an event that was previously considered to be a potential concern. In either case, crisis always necessitates swift decisions to mitigate the harm caused to the organization. Depending on the nature of the situation, the potential damage varies. However, in most circumstances, a crisis will have an impact on the organization's health or safety, its finances, its reputation, or certain combinations of any of these. A catastrophic fire could be a disaster that jeopardizes the organization's finances. However, if the fire occurs during business hours, it may threaten health and safety because employees may be exposed to danger. If you feel the burning need to learn more about crisis management and wish to help secure your organization, keep a close watch on your screens as we inform you about all the specifics of crisis management.
If you haven't subscribed to our channel yet, I want to request you to hit the subscribe button and turn on the notifications bell so that you don't miss out on any new updates or video releases from Great Learning. If you enjoyed this video, show us some love and like this video. Knowledge increases by sharing, so make sure you share this video with your friends and colleagues. Make sure to comment on the video with any queries or suggestions, and I will respond to your comments.
The study of crisis management started or originated during the disasters of 1980s. Now, let me tell you an interesting fact. I am sure most of them who is watching this video have been through a crisis. Now, you might be wondering, how would I know about a crisis that you have fallen into? Now, engaging you guys with this question, I am Edwin Thomas, and today we are going to discuss on the topic crisis management. So, before directly diving into the technical aspects of the topic, let's first discuss what is the agenda or the course takeaways that you will be getting or that I will be offering you throughout this course, right? So, the first topic that we'll be going to discuss is what is crisis management. Here, we'll be understanding what exactly is a crisis first, and then, after understanding what is a crisis, we'll be moving to the definition of crisis management, right? Now, after which we'll be discussing about the types of crisis. So basically, there are different types of crisis, and we'll be discussing each of them one by one and the different types with an examples. So you will have a proper understanding of each and different type of the crisis, right? Now, moving on to the next one, we'll be discussing why is crisis management important. That is basically here we'll be discussing the importance of crisis management. So there are certain important key factors that crisis management plays a very huge role in businesses so that the businesses doesn't collapse during the time of crisis, and that's the importance of crisis management, and we'll be quoting down points to understand the same, right? Now, moving to the next topic, we have four stages of crisis management. This can be rephrased as the four phases of crisis management as well. Here, we'll be discussing the four phases individually and understand how the crisis management begins and how the preparedness, how is the response, and how is the recovery, right? So, we'll be first understanding each of the phases individually, and we'll see how what is the role of the management and the people do in the organization or the business during the time of the crisis or during each of the phases, right? Now, after which we'll be discussing the crisis management in public relation, right? So basically, here what we are going to discuss is the role of public relations during the time of a crisis. So public relations plays an important role when a business or an organization is going through crisis. So here we'll be quoting down the important reasons or the factors or the facts why public relations has a very important role during the crisis, during when an organization is in a crisis, right? Now, next, we'll be discussing crisis management strategy. That is basically a crisis management plan or a how can we solve a crisis or the prevention plan. So here we will be discussing how we can actually defend against a crisis and through the certain strategies and the plans that help the organization to recover from a crisis, right? Now, coming to the last point, that is crisis management examples. Now, after we have gone through all the theory part, we really want to know how the crisis management is actually handled, because crisis is not something that is always trained, always a organization is trained for, right? So when we understand a real time example, so here I have taken two examples that has actually happened in India itself. So here we'll be discussing the case studies of the two examples that happened in India, where organizations actually took crisis management seriously and took necessary steps to regain its brand value or regain its retain its customers. So that's how we'll be discussing and ending this course. So without much further ado, let's begin the course. All right, guys. So now let's directly start off with our first topic, that is, what is crisis management? Now, under this topic, we will be first discussing what exactly is a crisis, right? So now let's go ahead and read the definition that is on your screen, right? A crisis is a state of mind, an internal feeling of utter confusion and anxiety to the point that previously efficient coping mechanisms fail and poor decision behaviors take their place. As a result, the person in crisis may feel puzzled, vulnerable, nervous, fearful, furious, guilty, hopeless, and powerless. Now, if you have got something out of the definition, well and good. But if you haven't understood anything, it's no problem, because the definition is a bit confusing. Now, let me break this definition into simple breadcrumbs, right? Now, remember, in the introduction part, I said that I will tell you some interesting fact about yourself, and I mentioned that most of you might have gone through a crisis, right? Now, let me explain that interesting fact to you. Now, remember the first time when you forgot to take your writing equipment or your pencil pouch for an examination, and during that very time, think about your situation or the mental stability, right? You guys would be in a very panicky situation. Exactly, right? Now, let me take a funny example. Your mother has assigned you a task of boiling milk, and you started boiling, and for a matter of fact, just for a fraction of a second, you just looked away and the milk started overflowing from the tumbler, and your mom sees this, right? Now that is the time there is a crisis going to happen. Exactly, right? Your mom is very furious to you and you have no idea what is she going to do to you. Exactly, right? So that's a funny example for crisis management. Crisis, sorry. Now, coming to the serious example. During the last year, a lot of places have been affected by floods, and Kerala is one of the most flood affected states in the country, right? Now, think of a situation. God forbid your house is getting flooded, and that's a very huge crisis that your family is going through. In the same way, a crisis can happen to a people, to a family, also to a business organization. So, during the time of the crisis is when a person or a entire family or even a business organization may feel puzzled, vulnerable, nervous, fearful, furious, guilty, hopeless, and powerless. I hope you guys have connected the definition to the example that I have given to you, right? Now, when you are feeling these kinds of emotion in you, the coping mechanisms fail, because these are the situations that you guys are not used to. So you are not able to cope up with the situation, and there is where poor decisions and behaviors takes their place. Now, if you are in a situation that you have already come across, you would have taken proper necessary steps to overcome it, right? So I'll let you know the example of the proper necessary step. So think about the time when you forgot to take a pen or a writing equipment to the examination for the second time. Now, this time you have already understood that you have already come across the situation of not bringing a writing equipment for an examination. So, this time you are a bit calm and you know what is the consequences and you know what is the remedy as well. You just have to go to a person or your friend and ask for a writing equipment or a pen, or go ahead and ask the examiner that if you could allow me to go to the stationery shop and buy the pen, right? So that's where the second time, when you have already experienced the crisis, helps you in managing the crisis very well. So that's how the decisions that you take after you have experienced a crisis becomes better and better. Now, I hope you guys have understood the definition now of the meaning that coping mechanism fail and poor decisions and behavior take their place, and why is the person in crisis feeling all the different types of emotions like puzzled, vulnerable, guilty, and powerless. This is all happening for a person, to an entire family, or even to an entire business organization. All right. Now let's move ahead with the next part, that is crisis management definition, right? So here, let's read out the definition first. Crisis management is the process by which an organization deals with a disruptive and unexpected event that threatens to harm an organization or its stakeholders. See, that's what is crisis management for an organization. Now, if an organization is actually facing an issue that is harming or disrupting the organization's visions and goals, and the process by which they are trying to overcome this situation is known as crisis management. Now, another definition: crisis management in business is the art of dealing with the sudden, unexpected events that disturb the employees, organization, and the external clients. I hope you guys have understood this definition clearly, because this is very simple. Like, the crisis management is the art of dealing the sudden and unexpected events. So there might be some unexpected cases on the company for any fraud, but which is going to actually harm the employees, the organization, and even the external clients who are bonded to the company or the organization, right? So any unexpected harm that is coming to the organization is, and dealing with it, is known as crisis management. That's the simple and clear definition. Right. Now, crisis management is the work of senior managers, public relations representative, human resource managers, and other critical operation staff. Now, there is nothing like crisis management representative. There may be a crisis management firm, or some companies might have crisis management representative, but usually in a business organization, it is the role of the senior managers, the public relations representatives, the human resource management, and other key operational staff. So basically, most of the higher upper hierarchy are responsible to come out of this crisis and build their brand and reputation and recover their brand and reputation again, and create the good impact in the people's eyes, right? So that's the work of the senior managers, the public relations, and the human resource managers. Basically, most of them who are in the upper hierarchy of the organization. So I hope you guys have understood what is crisis and what is the definition of crisis management. Okay, guys. So now that you have clearly understood what is the meaning of crisis, and also you have understood the definition of crisis management, so now let's move further and understand the different types of crisis that you can find, right? Now, so let's discuss the first one, that is financial crisis. Now, a financial crisis occurs when a company loses a significant amount of money all at once, and that makes it difficult to satisfy the financial obligations or service debt. Now, how does a company actually lose this much amount of money, right? Now, if you had to take an example, The IT giants like TCS, Infosys, Wipro, Cognizant, these companies actually have a lot of clients to whom they provide their IT services, right? Now, for an instance, take the example of Infosys. Now, if Infosys actually lose three of their major clients that were actually availing IT services from them, they are going to lose a huge amount of capital. So, how does financial crisis occur is when these three major clients actually contribute to 45% of their revenue. And that's how Infosys would go into a financial crisis, right? So this is an example how an organization can fall into a financial crisis. Now, there are certain reasons that can contribute to this financial crisis that are the loss of revenue, inflation, bankruptcy, or the loss in market or sudden change in market trends. Right. Now, an organization's capacity to serve the clients effectively can harm by a financial crisis. This type of occurrence increases the danger of talent turnover, making it critical to be proactive in crisis management to avoid business destabilization. Now, what is the meaning of this sentence? Now, I assume that you might have not got a full grasp of it, but let me break this sentence into easier parts, right? Now, organizations' capacity to serve the clients effectively can be harmed by financial crisis. Now, when an organization like Infosys or any IT giants, for example, are in financial crisis, they lose the major holding, that is the amount of money to pay to their employees. So they do not have their surplus amount of money to pay their employees, and that increases the danger of talent turnover. So what is the meaning of talent turnover is the loss of workforce, the talented workforce. So basically, if you have to take an example, if a company is in financial crisis and they aren't able to pay their employees, definitely the employees would try to switch the companies, and this would actually result into talent turnovers, that is the loss of workforce to that organization. And when there is a loss of workforce to that organization, the capacity to serve their clients effectively can be harmed, right? And that is the major reason that becomes very active in a crisis management, right? And also the business gets destabilized. Now, what can be the measures that can be taken up? Now, if you have to point out some few measures, that is having a crisis fund or seeking alternate sources of financing in such instances, both are a very viable resources, right? Because the in the end, major part is the amount of money you need to pay your employees, right? So developing more effective revenue generating tactics, you can actually implement new ways to increase your revenue, right? Now, finding new markets or altering your business model, that's another way you can come out of a financial crisis. Now, identifying partners or investors who can help in emergency funding, you must entrust the investors or any partners who could actually provide you that emergency fund, and you must make them believe that your businesses can come out of this crisis according to the new business models or any suggestions that you have shown to them through which they can entrust you guys or the organization that will come out of crisis, right? Now, having a crisis management plan in place will help you regain your operation and minimize the damage that is essential. So, if you already have a crisis management plan, you are already prepared for something that is going to come worse to your organization. So, if you're already having a plan in your organization, it becomes a bit more smoother in recovering the organization from a crisis. So, that's how you come out of financial crisis. Now, moving on to the next type of crisis is the technological crisis. Right. Now, its operations are hampered by failure of technological tools. Hardware and software failures as well as industrial accidents are example. Now, A good example of this is when you are running an e-commerce site, when your organization is completely online, and suddenly all the servers of your organization gets crashed, and that could lead to a huge amount of loss in your revenue, right? So that is one example of when the servers gets crashed of your organization. And another, if you are a manufacturing company, your factory, the machineries get damaged, and that could actually reduce so much of productivity, and the amount of finished products coming out of your factory gets reduced, and that's another reason your uh, products get the revenue or the sales get reduced due to technological crisis. Now, another instance of technological crisis is if a competitor develops a technology that allows them to reduce the production cost and launch items faster, they can swiftly gain the market and also reduce your revenue. So basically, you understand if you are owning a business and you are a product-based company and you are producing products in one way, and there's a competitor of you who is producing the same kind of product in a faster and an efficient manner and also selling it to the clients in a lesser rate. So obviously, if you are a retailer, you would obviously go to the person who is selling the product to in a lesser rate so that you can increase your profit margins, right? So when this type of things happen, that is where technological crisis begins, right? Now, what is the remedy or the solution or the resolution to all this, right? Now, investing in backup solution that can fill the hole if your main infrastructure becomes unusable is a smart technique for preventing and managing technological crisis. Now, the meaning of the sentence is investing in backup solution means investing in new technologies or new infrastructure or machineries can actually fill the hole. Now, filling the hole means avoiding or preventing your organization to fall in the trap of technological crisis. And now, when you have a new technologies and machineries within your organization as your backup, you will have that's a very good or smart technique for preventing and managing the technological crisis, right? Now, moving ahead with the next type of crisis, that is personal crisis. Now, personal crisis occurs when a member of your organization engages in illegal or unethical behavior that negatively impacts your company's public image. So basically, it involves an employee in doing something illegal or something unethical behavior that impacts the image of the organization. Now, the manner in which the organization handles the matter is critical because it can assist them in retaining a more good public image, right? So now if you as an organization, when they are dealing with this situation, as transparent as it can be, it would create more or a better public image in the eyes of the users or the public, right? Now, coming to the next point, when your company is facing a crisis as a result of the employee's action, it is critical to propose a balanced plan that directly addresses the problem. And both the employee's legal right and the protection of the reputation of the business needs to be considered. Now, when you are talking about these 2 points, it should be like when an employee has done something illegal or unethical, you must propose a balanced plan. Now, there should be a balanced plan? Because there are two sides that are seeing. One is the people who is working for you, are the employees who is seeing the approach of the organization in rectifying the issue, and is the general public who is also looking into the matter, the way or the approach that the company is going to take action against the employee. So as an organization, it must be a very balanced plan that needs to be proposed, and so that both the employees' legal rights and also the protection and the reputation of the business remains intact, right? So that's how you actually overcome the personal crisis. Now, moving ahead with the next one is the organizational crisis. Now, organizational crisis is into three parts. That is crisis of deception, crisis of management misconduct, crisis of skewed management values. Now, let's discuss the first one, crisis of deception. When an employee of a firm misrepresents facts about the company, it harms its reputation and misleads others. This is known as deception crisis. Taking legal disciplinary action against the employee is a good way to deal with the situation. So basically, if an employee had a very bad experience, or it might be a bad experience on his point of view, but he is actually going and misrepresenting facts about the company, which is harming the reputation and is misleading the image of the company, right? So when you the best way to deal with the situation is to go against disciplinary action against the employee, and that's how you deal with that situation. That is crisis of deception. Now, crisis of management misconduct. In this case, a crisis arises as a result of a management's unethical conduct. Now, such as selling counterfeit goods, that is defaulted goods that is not working, or selling customers' personal information, or engaging in lawful operations. So these three are the like major reasons that is happening in crisis of management misconduct. So selling counterfeit goods, that is fraudulent goods, or selling the customer's personal information to another company so that they could use their data to sell their products, or engaging in unlawful operation. These three are the kinds of facts or the issues that comes into crisis of management misconduct. Now coming to the third one, that is a crisis of skewed management values. So basically skewed means the whatever the management had the vision and the goals, there is unbalancing in them. Now the way the management was seeing their visions is now completely different, and this occurs when management makes decisions that benefit the company in short term while ignoring the long term ramifications, putting the investors' money at risk. To achieve their goals, the management may suppress information concerning investment or abuse their power. So these are the ways that management can make decisions that actually benefits them in a short term, and that will be actually disrupting the organization in a long term. So that's how a crisis of skewed management values actually affects an organization in organizational crisis, right? Now moving ahead, we have natural crisis. Now, natural disasters such as earthquakes, tornadoes, tsunamis, or hurricanes can affect a company's operations, while most businesses recover rapidly after natural catastrophes. So basically, these are like IT sectors, they recover very rapidly, but particularly those in extractive or power industries may be badly harmed. For example, if area where tsunami has hit and there is a lot of power industries that is affected, it becomes very difficult to actually re-establish all those power units and power generating modules over there, right? So that's how it affects certain industry or certain sectors of industries very badly. So that's what is natural crisis. Now, coming to the next one, confrontational crisis. Now, when an individual or a group of individual or a group of people has particular demands and take action to compel the management to meet those demands, a confrontational crisis emerges. So basically, this is a person, it can be a single person or a group of people that is demanding something from a management, but the management is not happy with that kind of demand. So that's when a confrontational crisis emerges. So basically, the strikes, the boycott, and the workplace blockades can result into confrontational crisis, right? Now, negotiation, ideally with assistance of a professional negotiator, is one of the finest strategies to handle confrontational issues. So basically, when the people in the workforce are actually demanding something from the management, it's always the negotiation between the company and the people or the workforce that helps in resolving these kind of crises. So that's how you come out of a confrontational crisis. Now, moving ahead, we have crisis of malice. Now, a malice crisis emerges as a result of unhealthy rivalry or competition. Now, a competing corporation, for example, could conduct a smear campaign against a top leader or even a product line in order to undermine a more successful competitor and lose public trust and market share. So basically, they want to diminish the other product using their product, and they want to suppress the competitor's product. That is because of the unhealthy rivalry and competition. Now, another example is when people create unfavorable evaluation or spread misinformation about a company's product or services in order to undermine the client's confidence. So this is the another way when crisis of malice happens, when people create different rumors or spread misinformation about the product of the company, and by spreading this, they actually undermine the client's confidence. So basically, if there are clients of the organization, they feel less confident to go with that organization for their services, right? So the basic best way to come out of this crisis is to take legal action and to go after the people who is creating this kind of crisis. Now, moving ahead, we have human-made disaster. Right. A human caused disaster is a type of crisis brought about by people's action. Now, a cyber attack, for example, can impair a company's activity and make it impossible to restore them. A financial crisis, such as those caused by high-level market manipulation and transportation mishaps, can also cause corporation to face a significant problem. Now, these are our kind of human-made disaster, the cyber attacks. So many companies who are completely online, they can have a huge amount of cyber attacks coming in. So the IT and cybersecurity team must be very much confident with their firewall to avoid these human-made disasters, right? Now, even if the company is into the human, if is attacked by a cyber attack, it becomes very difficult to restore back all the information because the information also gets leaked, and also a lot of confidential data gets leaked to these cyber hackers, right? So that's a very bad situation for a company to be in. Now, coming to the financial crisis that we were talking, that is also can be human made. Now, for example, recently a huge ship that was containing a lot of goods got stuck in the sea, right? So in the port. So that caused a huge amount of loss of supply chain, and that actually shook the supply chain all around the globe. So that is the kind of human-made transportation mishaps that can also affect an organization. So I hope you guys have understood almost all the types of crisis that we have discussed here now. All right, guys. So now, moving ahead with the next topic, we have why is crisis management important? So, now coming to the importance of crisis management, the first point that we have here is individuals are prepared to tackle unforeseen events and harsh conditions in the workplace with courage and resolve them through crisis management. Now, any organization that is facing a crisis is something which they have never faced. Like even the employees or the entire organization might have not seen the kind of crisis that they might be going through, right? So, with the effective crisis management strategies, the individuals are mentally prepared to tackle these unforeseen events and the harsh conditions that is going through the organization, right? So, now employees adapt well to the organization's unexpected adjustment. Now, an organization which was running smooth pre the uh, a crisis was in a structured manner. For everything there was a structure for applying, so there was a very good structured manner the organization was flowing, right? Now during the time of the crisis, this entire structure get disrupted, and the employees must adapt easily towards this flow of work, right? So with the help of crisis management, employees can actually adapt well to the organization's unexpected adjustments. So that's how crisis management helps the employees to adapt during the time of crisis. Now, employees can comprehend and assess the reason for a problem and respond it in the most effective manner feasible. So now, with the help of crisis management, the employees are actually able to identify, comprehend, analyze the reasons for the problem and the reasons that actually led the organization into the crisis, and respond to it in the most effective and most feasible manner. Right now, coming to the managers, managers can actually use crisis management to design methods to emerge from the unclear situation and to decide on the future course of action. So during the crisis, managers also tend to learn a lot of things, and with the help of crisis management, they could actually design the methods to actually predict the unclear situations to follow and decide on the future course of action for the organization. So that's how crisis management can help managers as well. And now coming to managers again, they could actually use crisis management to detect early indicators of a crisis and alert the staffs about the consequences and take required precautions. The excellent example of this is the COVID, right? The COVID pandemic lockdown. Now, a brilliant example of an Indian startup, that is Ola. Ola is the vehicle mobility company that actually faced a huge amount of atrocities or catastrophes due to the lockdown, because their basic revenue generation is through the mobility of vehicles, and due to lockdown that was completely scrapped out, right? But as a company, as the management of the company actually decided a very good relief fund, that is drive the drivers fund, which actually helped a lot of thousands of family that were associated with Ola, as well as the drivers that were not associated with the Ola. So the Drive the Drivers Fund was actually carried out by the Ola group, the group of investors, and also a lot of crowdfunding as well. So this is how the crisis can be managed. So basically Ola could have just ignored the drivers community, but when after the post COVID situation, these drivers are actually going to be the employees of Ola as well. So they need to have a good rapport amongst the company and the drivers community, right? So that's how you actually maintain or retain your employees and actually improve or retain the public or the brand image of your organization in the public's view. So now, say due to this drivers fund, a lot of drivers community and their families have actually benefited out of it. And also Ola also created during this pandemic and another idea of Ola emergency, wherein people could actually book an Ola that would come to them in case of emergency of any COVID patients. So these people could book an Ola emergency cab, and the rides were free to the hospital. So these kind of initiatives from Ola actually help them in overcoming this crisis. So these are the reasons that you can say that crisis management is of very good importance to any organization. All right, guys. So now let's discuss the four stages of crisis management, right? Now, there are four phases of crisis management that can help keep a focus on the organization's long term missions and goals. So, let's begin with the phase one. The phase one is mitigation. Now, if you just go down and Google the word mitigation, Google will tell you the meaning as lowering the severity or reducing the pain. So that's exactly what does phase 1 does in crisis management. So basically it reduces the severity of the crisis that the organization is facing, right? So the first point that comes under the phase 1 is form a risk management group. So basically forming a risk management group helps in analyzing and understanding where all the organization is facing the risk during the crisis. Now, choose a coordinator who is ready to take action. So, there must be one guy who needs to take actions and take initiatives and lead the team. And only then the processes flow in a smooth manner, right? Now, create or update a business continuity plan, that is BCP, to decide how you will service the community of your institution during the crisis. Now, basically, you might have clients before the organization was in crisis. So now, when your organization is in the crisis, you need to come up with a business continuity plan so that your clients doesn't leave you in the middle and go. So you need to serve your clients still when you are in a crisis. So that's why you should come up with a business continuity plan. Now, create a communication strategy for communicating with on and off campus stakeholders and communities. So basically, in during a crisis, communication is one of the most priority thing that you will have to follow. Maybe it may be within the internal employees or maybe the stakeholders who are off campus. So you need to have a proper communication strategy or proper communication channel with all the employees and the stakeholders or the investors who are a part of the organization, right? Now, establish communication channels and determine your greatest sources of information in the time of crisis. So basically, you need to determine the proper authentic sources of information and establish the communication channel to disperse the news, right? Now, understand the budget implications and which areas of revenue and spending are most likely to be affected so that you can receive financial help when you need it. So that's the final point in mitigation phase. That is, you need to understand the budget implication. Where is the budget actually used? Like which are the areas which are actually falling apart, and which are the areas which needs the financial help. So understanding this, you can actually go to this department and could get the financial aid and then boost up the department to revive the department during the time of crisis. So that's how the phase 1, that is the mitigation phase, comes under the 4 stages of crisis management. Now, coming to the phase 2, that is preparedness. Now, in the phase 2, the review insurance coverage on regular basis to ensure everything is covered and make any necessary changes if required. So basically here the insurance coverage and everything is reviewed, and if there is any changes in the insurance policies, that needs to be changed. So that is the first point in the preparedness, that is a phase 2. Now, make a plan to hold virtual and remote board meetings. So, basically, during the time of the crisis, the best way, or we can say, we can hold virtual or remote meetings so that you can understand the concerns of the investors, the outside stakeholders, and people who are inside within the organization. So, we can actually plan to hold virtual meetings so as to discuss the future of the organization after the crisis. Now, make a crisis communication strategy. Now, the as I have told you before, communication is one of the most important things during the time of crisis. If an organization is facing is in a crisis, communication needs to be proper and accurate. So that there is no further misunderstanding within the organization during the time of crisis, which would if there is any, that would actually cost the organization a lot more during the time of crisis. So now the board can also assist in this phase by defining the criteria for gaining access to the financial resource. So actually they can examine the amount of financial resource they have, then examining your bylaws to see if virtual board meetings and votings are possible, So for further any, so these are actually helpful in case of any voting requirements are actually required in the organization. So now coming and examining the crisis communication strategy, so whatever strategy that is being prepared, the board can help you or assist you in examining the same. So that's how the second phase of crisis management comes to play, that is preparedness. All right. Now coming to the phase three, that is response phase. Now basically the response phase is also, you can call it as the implementation phase, right? So in the response phase, it is basically they start prioritizing the most critical concern. So basically here they will be considering the most critical parts wherein the organization is being affected during the crisis. And then the second point coming is keep in touch with your important stakeholders on regular basis. Now, if you think about a situation when your stakeholders get try to cut off from your organization, and that's when the entire organization fails, because the stakeholders need to stay within the organization, because the amount of money or investment they have put in the organization is what is keeping the organization alive. And if you don't communicate with the stakeholders regularly, the organization can fall apart very easily. Now, examine the financial implications. Financial implication means the financial conclusions, like what, how much of financial reserves do you have, and also make contingency plan preparations. So basically, contingency preparation means what are the future course of action, what are the future plans of the organization after the recovery, or the future recovery options that we have, so that we can revive the organization. So this is the third phase, that is the response phase. Now, uh, put the business continuity plan into action. So during the mitigation period, the business continuity plan was introduced, and now in the response phase you need to implement the business continuity plan. Next, we have to implement the remote work policy so that the work goes on in a smooth manner. Then reorganizing your staff requirements, like you have to reorganize your staffing requirements. In the time you can actually, some people can actually leave the organization, then you need to find out the talented recruits, so that they could help you in reviving the organization. Then manage the stress reactions of all stakeholders, including employees, trustees, contributors, and funders. During the time of crisis, there is going to be stress reactions amongst all, because during for the stakeholders is the amount of money they have invested, the employees, it is their families that they need to take care, because they're not pretty much sure they will be getting paid. The trustees, the contributors, and the funders all are a part of the organization who were hit badly or badly influenced by the crisis that the organization is going through, right? Now, coming to the second last point, stabilize the cash flow by gaining access to the recovery or the response money and the insurance benefits. So basically, you need to understand the cash flow and try to identify what are the sources of cash flow can come from. That is the insurance and the recovery money and the financial reserves that could help in reviving the organization. Then observe where the tragedy reveals the organizational flaws and start prioritizing how to address them in the future. So basically, you need to identify, you need to observe and analyze and pinpoint the places where the organizational flaws are there, and you need to plan accordingly and address them in the future, so that there won't be any questions that are raised against them, right? So that's the response phase of crisis management. All right, guys. So now coming to the last phase, that is the phase four, that is a recovery phase. Now, during the recovery phase, these are the following things that happens to assess what is possible in this new environment. Now, it is certain that before the crisis hit the organization, the environment was very much peaceful and different and structured than what is there now. So when a organization is hit by a crisis, the new environment actually gives another different environment to work on with. So you need to understand what is possible with the new environment to cope up with the organization's visions and goals, right? Now, talk to your peers and pick up tips from them. So basically, you need to talk to your peers, understand what are the kinds of things that they can do to revive yourself and help the organization in rebuilding its structure and foundations, right? And as needed, implement a strategic plan. So you need to have a strategic plan, or else it will be of no use, because strategy is the key thing to revive any organization in during the time of crisis. Now, obtain funding or for recovery. So every business requires funding and investments, so you need to identify the sources of investments and entrust them with the new vision and missions of the organization that are to be upheld after the crisis has been recovered, right? So the new ways sources of funding must be found out. Now, address an organizational force that has emerged as a result of the crisis. You need to be transparent, honest, and uh, tell it out in the public what were the organizational flaws that has emerged as the result of a crisis. So you need to address it with brutal honesty and tell them and interest the public that this won't be happening, and we have things under control. And you need to be very much transparent so that uh, the public has a good image of the organization in their eyes. Now, create transition plans for stakeholders for the new normal. So basically, before the crisis has hit the organization, and after the crisis has hit the organization, things are very much different. So you need to create the transition plan. So basically, the stakeholders agreement on different types of agreements need to be renegotiated, and the contracts must be renegotiated. So these are the transition phase that the stakeholders needs to go through, right? Now, recognize and manage all the stakeholders' ongoing stress and trauma. During the time of crisis, it's legit that almost all the stakeholders are very much worried about the amount of money they might have lost, and the different kinds of scenarios and the trauma that they might be going through. So you need to recognize all this and manage and keep them trusted with the organization. So only then you can actually revive the organization. Then get out of the trap of emergency decision making and start making better long term choices. During the time of crisis, there are going to be very different behavior from different team members or the employees or the stakeholders. But you need to keep your heads calm and take proper decisions that are going to help in the future of the organization and start making better long term choices. Then identify fresh investments and divestiture opportunities. So basically, you need to identify fresh investments from fresh investors and different funding agencies, and also you could divestiture some investment or subsidiaries of your organization for emergency funding, right? Now, coming to the last point that has already been discussed, the stakeholders' agreement, the contracts and other agreements should be renegotiated for the new normal, that is after the recovery of the crisis that has hit the organization. So, I hope you guys have understood all the four phases of crisis management. All right, guys. So now we'll be discussing crisis management in public relations. That is, here we'll be discussing the role of public relations in crisis management. Now, why is PR so much important in crisis management? That is because the view of the organization in the eyes of the public is a very crucial indicator of whether the organization will survive in the future or not. Because only when there is a credibility in the organization in the views of the people, the public can actually have a trust with the organization. And that's exactly what we are going to discuss here. Now, in a crisis, the company should act quickly, and the public is more inclined to forgive an honest error than a premeditated deception. So what is being told out here is the public is more inclined to forgive the honest error than a calculated lie. So basically, organizations might actually want to hide the organizational flaws and uh, give out a press release giving out a calculated lie, but the public is more inclined towards to forgive an honest error. So you need to understand that if you are actually going to go ahead with a calculated lie or a premeditated deception, you need to get all the things right, or else you could just go ahead and tell out that these were the organizational flaws and please forgive us and we'll be working on this. So this is what the public actually wants the organizations to say. Now, be informative and so that the rumors aren't created. So you need to inform the public regarding all the organizational flow, that the organization is going through a crisis and what kind of crisis is it going through, and give all the details upfront so that there are no rumors that is being getting created by the people or any media companies. Because when there is rumors around an organization which is under a crisis, the rumors actually hit or create make things worse for an organization. So always be informative and give out all the informations that is to the public upfront so that the rumors aren't created around the organization. Now, people will be more forgiving if it is evident that the corporation cares about the crisis victims. Now, that's an excellent example that we discussed earlier, wherein Ola, the vehicle mobility company, actually took care of the drivers community by giving creating a campaign, the drivers fund, right? The drive the drivers fund campaign. So here they helped out the drivers community that were within the Ola and also helped the drivers that were not a part of Ola as well. So this way, the people actually forgive the organization who takes care of their crisis victims. So that's an excellent example that Ola has given to us. Now, it is crucial to be concerned and show that the public that you care. So that's the one of the most important parts in public relation, that you need to create an image of your organization, or the create a true image of your organization, that you as an organization actually care about the crisis victims, and what all are the employees in the organization also going through with them. So if you are not caring about these things, the public will have a bad opinion about the organization, and that can actually affect the organization as a whole. So that's why crisis management in public relation, or the role of PR in crisis management, is very, very important. All right, guys. So now we'll be discussing about crisis management strategies. That is how to solve crisis management, the prevention plan. So the first point that comes in this is improve communication. Now, if your organization has communication failure, it can compound to many more problems, and the crisis might become a major crisis, right? Now, according to the research and analysis of the crisis hit companies like Nokia or British Petroleum, they said that the root cause or the aggravating factor is the poor flow of information. Even Harvard Business School, according to their research, said that they prefer to have an open dialogue which aims to bring the top managers and the executives closer to the employers so that the proper flow of communication and information is given to them. And that's why improved communication is one of the major factors to prevent the crisis. Now, coming to the second point, that is implement reverse engineering. Now you need to examine in depth that what are the devastating or what are the crises that your organization in that sector can be hit with, right? So now you need to draw lessons from them. You need to understand or learn take out the learnings from them. work backward and see what are the changes that needs to be implemented in your organization to prevent that situation. And that's the second point, that is implementing the reverse engineering to prevent any crisis. Now, coming to the next point, that is audit risk. So now you need to dig deep into the documents and find look out for vulnerabilities, that too even from the entry stage, by talking to the staffs in confidence. Now you should only not look into the financial threat, but you should also look into the real world risks, right? So you need to understand that you need to ask yourself some questions, like if whether the top executives are available 24/7, if there is any serious or very important issues that need to be reported, or if, for example, if due to any natural disaster your work location gets unavailable, and what can be done then. You need to ask these kinds of questions. You should also ask your key stakeholders whether they see any vulnerabilities, and then evaluate the crisis documents and policies. And you could also look in for weaknesses and change these weaknesses and change the policies if you find anything really relevant that needs to be changed. So these are the things that comes into play when you are looking into the audit risks. All right, now coming to the next point, that is collect intelligence. So now here you need to broaden your research, you need to broaden your analysis not only to your competitor, you need to understand or collect data, that too from media. Now here media can be a powerful tool because media covers a lot of things. So you could actually extract a lot of intelligence from media regarding the political developments in the country, then the regulatory actions, the activists campaigns, and also the climatic changes. So these are all the differentiating factors that could actually lead to a crisis. So you need to be very sharp in collecting the intelligence. All right, so now coming to the last point, and it's one of the most important point, that is maintain social responsibilities. Now, according to a research, in an everyday non-crisis period, the organization who were actually socially invested, like helping the lower communities, or taking care of the employees and the families, and also other philanthropist works, these companies, when they were hit by crisis, they were able to rebound or recover from the crisis with their stock market value intact. Now, with organizations who aren't socially invested, it becomes very difficult because their stakeholders tend to disregard the apologies that are being given from the organization. So, you need to focus on real world scenarios and start helping with the small minority groups, the schools, or the communities which require some help, so that you could create a good image of your brand or the organization in the eyes of the people, so that when at times you are in trouble or you are in crisis, the people who have a good value for your organization would be there to help you out to recover and rebound easier and faster. And that's how you solve crisis management, and that's how you prevent your organization from a crisis. All right, guys. So now we have come almost to the end of the course, and here we'll be discussing about the successful crisis management examples in India. Now, the very first example that I would want to take here is the Nestle Maggie Noodles crisis management. Now, this was a crisis that Nestle had faced in the year 2015. So, what had actually happened? The FDA, the Food and Safety Administration of India, had actually accused Nestle of having higher content of lead and MSG. So, what was Nestle's initial reaction to this was that they immediately sent a post or sent it in the press release that the food quality and safety standards are their almost most important priority, and they have no excuses regarding this. But still, the FDA of India had actually accused Nestle of high contents of lead and MSG. So, what in response to this, Nestle actually created a website wherein they had an FAQ section wherein people could put down their queries regarding the Maggie noodles, and also they had actually implement replied to each and every one who had tagged Maggie and asked their questions in each and every social media website, like Twitter, or any of the social media wherein Maggie was tagged to, and they replied individually to each and every query. And this is how Nestle actually balance the social media activity or social media queries of the people. And another thing that Nestle did is that they actually then retested the Mackie, and they showed them the results, and it was actually showing the lead and the MSG content was in the minimum level, or the level that could be actually supported by the food authorities. But still then they wanted to create a good impression on the people. So what they did is they actually removed all the Maggie noodles from the shelves. That is almost $50 million or US dollars worth of Maggie noodles from India. And then they explicitly did their tests in UK. And then they concluded that the Maggi noodles is very safe, and it's all the lead and the MSG levels are in the proper levels. So only after then they actually moved back the 2 minute Maggi noodles into India. And also after the tests in UK, even Canada also uh, 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 put down that Maggi noodles is safe. And then they started putting the emotional connectivity ads of Maggi on the screens of on the TV screens, like the Maggie is coming again to India with even more tastes, and it's also coming in the small street foods, and people are very happy. And this is the way Nestle actually managed the crisis of 2015, wherein the FDA had actually accused them of higher lead content and MSG content. So now coming to the second case study, this is a pretty old case study that happened in 2003. Now, the Cadbury crisis management or the worm controversy is the case study or the crisis that happened with Cadbury in the year 2003. So basically, the FDA had actually looked into some Cadbury chocolate bricks, and they found that there were worms inside the chocolate. Now this was a case of infestation. So the FDA actually sealed up the large trucks of Cadbury chocolates, and they accused Cadbury with respect to their bad packaging. Now Cadbury, in response, initially did not actually take up the accusation, but then later they actually removed every Cadbury the chocolate that was there in the shelf, and they invested almost rupees 15 crores into a new packaging style. So basically, now it was a plastic wrapped cover, and inside there was metallic covering over the chocolates to prevent infestation. So this is the amount of care they took to overcome the worm controversy or the worm crisis management. So now after this, even they actually took the initiative to bring on a brand ambassador, that was Amitabh Bachchan, who embodied the values of the Cadbury chocolate. And this is how they managed the controversies that were created in 2003, and they brought in the new packaging style in 2004 with an investment of rupees 15 crore. And still they didn't even actually hike up the price of the Cadbury chocolate. It was still the same, but the cost of packaging increased almost 10 to 15 percentage. So this is how the brand Cadbury actually manage the crisis of the worm controversies. I hope you guys have understood both the case studies and how the both companies took care of their crisis in their own different manners. All right, guys. So if you have reached the summary part of the video, give a pat on your back. Now, in this section, we'll be just giving a small discussion or a brief discussion on the topics that we have discussed throughout the entire course. So, to begin with, we started off with what is crisis management, and in that, we learned what is exactly a crisis, right? Then, after understanding what is crisis, we further moved ahead with the next topic, that is what is crisis management definition. So, we here understood the definition of crisis management, what is crisis management in business, and then we understood which who are the professionals who are taking care of organization when they are in a crisis, right? Now, moving on, we next moved on to the topic, that is types of crisis. So here we first discussed what is financial crisis. We understood what are the reasons that can be leading to the financial crisis, and then we understood what are the measures that can be taken up to avoid a financial crisis, right? So then we moved on to technological crisis. We understood what exactly is a technological crisis, how can a competitor have an impact on the technological crisis, and then we understood how we can prevent technological crisis by investing in a new technologies, right? Then we moved on to a new type of crisis, that is personal crisis. This is a crisis that involves any employee into any unethical manner. We understood how an organization must take care of this, and how to propose a balanced view on this topic, right? That's how personal crisis is managed. Then we understood the organizational crisis. In organization crisis, we learned about three. This is crisis of deception, crisis of management misconduct, and crisis of skewed management values. We discussed each of them briefly with an examples, right? Then we moved on to natural crisis. Natural crisis is something very common that you might have already understood with the term natural crisis itself. So human-made earthquakes, tornado, tsunamis, etc. Then we understood what is confrontational crisis. That is with respect to individual or a group of individual causing any demands to the organization. For example, in the form of strikes, boycotts, or workplace blockades. So these are the confrontational crisis. Basically, a negotiator is used to negotiate the issues within the company and the employers, right? Then moving ahead, we had the crisis of malice, wherein the competitor creates unhealthy rivalry and creates this kind of crisis. And then finally, we moved ahead with the human-made disaster. So basically, human-made disaster is a cybercrime or transportation mishap that occurred. We discussed in the example due to the big container ship getting trapped and so much of supply chain got blocked up. So this is known as human-made disaster. So this is what we covered in types of crisis. Then moving ahead, we move to the why is crisis management important. So these were the points that were discussed, that why is crisis management important, and we understood that if there is no crisis management, the entire organization can go down, right? Then we came to the four stages of crisis management, wherein we discuss each of the phases. That is the phase one, mitigation in depth, and then second one is the preparedness, then the third one is response, and then recovery. So we discuss all the four phases of crisis management in depth, and you can go back and look into the discussion briefly, right? Then we moved ahead with the next topic, that is crisis management in public relation. So basically here we were discussing the role of PR in crisis management, and we understood that during the time of crisis, that is when an organization is going under a crisis or organization hit by a crisis, public relation or the views of the public, that the organization is a very key role. Like, you need to understand that the people's views on an organization actually helps a lot in helping the organization come out of a crisis. So that's one key point that you will have to take out from the crisis management in public relationship. Then moving ahead with the crisis management strategy, we understood how to solve a crisis management and the prevention plan. We discussed each of these points deeply in the module, right? Then Finally, we came to the end of the course by discussing crisis management example, and that too we discussed one of the most successful crisis management examples that took place in India, that is the 2015 Nestle Maggi noodles ban and the 2003 Cadbury crisis management, the worm controversy. So we had a good deep discussion on these two case studies, right? So that's all about the course. I hope you guys have enjoyed it along with me. I hope you guys had a good amount of learning from the course on crisis management. So that's all from my side. I will be back soon with the next course very soon.
If you haven't subscribed to our channel yet, I want to request you to hit the subscribe button and turn on the notifications bell so that you don't miss out on any new updates or video releases from Great Learning. If you enjoyed this video, show us some love and like this video. Knowledge increases by sharing, so make sure you share this video with your friends and colleagues. Make sure to comment on the video with any queries or suggestions, and I will respond to your comments.